Hello and welcome back to the second tutorial in the Cocos2d-x JavaScript tutorial series. In this tutorial we're going to cover supporting multi-resolution displays. Basically we're doing it for iOS, so we need to cover iPad and iPhone, and then in iPad we need to cover iPad and iPad HD. For iPhone we need to cover regular iPhone and iPhone HD. We'll also be covering iPhone HD5, but I actually call it iPhone HD5. You can call it whatever you want. iPhone HD5 is any iPhone with the wider screen ratio, so iPhone 5 and iPhone 5S. In each tutorial, after the first tutorial, I will be saying what code base we'll be using. So for this tutorial, we'll be using the project that we prepared in tutorial 1, so just have that to hand. If you don't have it to hand, there will be a link to download it in the description along with the source code from this tutorial as well. First thing I'm going to do is open up the project that we had from the previous tutorial. And before we actually get into doing anything, I'm just going to show you how it runs on the different emulators. First of all, just show you iPhone. As you can see on iPhone, it looks good, it fills the entire screen, the button looks a reasonable size, so that's fine. So let's try it on iPhone Retina, which is iPhone 4 and iPhone 4S. Here we come across the problem of multi-resolutions. We are using the same assets, but we are using it on a bigger resolution display or simulator in this case. And this image, therefore, is a quarter of the size of the actual simulator itself. An easy way we can overcome this is either to scale the images accordingly, and if we were to scale them up, we'll get distortion, but we can scale them down from a higher resolution. Problem with that is, most of the time, a lower resolution device, whether it's Android, iOS, Windows Phone or wherever, is usually less capable in terms of hardware. Therefore, if you're scaling down a larger image, you're loading a larger image from the start, therefore you're using more resources. That's something that you don't want to do, at least not for every resource. So the best thing to do is at the start, check what device you've got and load the appropriate resources. But let's just show you what the iPhone Retina 4-inch looks like. So that will be iPhone 5 and iPhone 5S. It looks very similar, but the actual screen is a little wider. But the actual items themselves are the same size because the pixel density is the same. Let's quickly compare it with iPad. This is iPad 1, 2 and iPad mini. This is a very similar resolution to the iPhone Retina. This is at 1024 by 768, and the iPhone 4 and iPhone 4S is at 960 by 640. Let's just finally show you iPad Retina just to illustrate the issue. As you can see, I actually have to scroll because I'm using an iMac 27-inch and the native resolution on that is 2560 by 1440, and the window size is slightly bigger than the actual resolution of my display. Plus it's not even covering the full height. So this image looks really small, and that's not how you want your app to appear. You don't want it just to appear in the center of a small little button, because this button seems alright here, I'm able to click it. But imagine if this was on a device like the iPad Air or the iPad 4 or the iPad 3 that has a Retina display. This would not be very usable at all. So what we want to do is load a different resource depending on the device we're using. And what we want to do for that is actually create different folders in the resolution. First of all, we'll delete all of these images that we have. The close normal, close selected, hello world. I'll provide my own close normal and close selected. They will just be the default ones that you can find in the Cocos2d directory from the examples. The hello world will just be a really simple black canvas with the name of the device that it's actually running on. And I will provide a link to those resources in the description as well. What we're going to be doing is creating 5 separate folders: iPhone, iPhone HD, iPhone HD5, iPad and iPad HD. I already have the actual folders themselves, so all I will be doing is just copying. Sorry about that. All I'll be doing is just copying the folders into my solution. So I'm going to copy these into the resources, the res. Here we go. Let's just quickly take a look what's inside each of them. The iPad HD has a closed normal, closed selected, and a hello world image. The iPad just has a hello world. You might be wondering, why doesn't it have the buttons? Because obviously you would naturally want the button to appear on an iPad, not just an iPad HD. The reason is, as I said before, the iPad is a very similar resolution to the iPhone HD and the iPhone HD5 as well. So what we're going to do is fall back on images that are of the same size, but they're used across multiple devices. For example, non-background images we all use in iPad, iPhone HD5 and iPhone HD. So the iPhone HD folder will contain the closed and the closed normal and the closed selected images, and then the HD5 will fall back to HD, and the iPad will fall back to HD5, which will eventually fall back to HD. This fallback process you might not completely understand as of now, but when we get into the coding, you'll understand it a little better. And then the iPhone just has the lowest resolution images there is. I will be demonstrating how to use the iPhone resources as well, but I personally don't support iPhone in apps that are developed because the market share of a non-retina iPhone is immensely low. Same with iPad 1 as well. It's less than 5%. I think it's less than 4.5% as of yesterday. So supporting it, you've got to weigh up the advantages of adding maybe a bit of extra development, especially for the iPhone non-retina, versus not supporting it at all. But I will show you how to get it to work on there just in case you want to support it. The next step is to actually add the code which falls back on the different directories. You want to go to your project, go to appdelegate.cpp, then here we're going to add all the code that is required to load the appropriate assets depending on what device we have, and also it will try and fall back if it can't load a resource for that appropriate device. So let's begin the coding. So far all of this is just relatively generic, and a little bit later on you will see where the different devices are checked. pDirector is already declared and initialized, so we just use that. We set the OpenGL view accordingly to the view that we just declared and initialized. You obviously don't have to name your variables the same, but these are just the coding conventions I use. So this is how I name them, but you can name whatever you want. It's just if you name this variable different, then just make sure wherever it's referenced you name it different there as well. Now we're going to create a vector, and in this vector it's going to contain some string values, and the string values will be the resolution directory and the actual order they should go in, so the fallback order. For this you always do highest to lowest. Obviously you want to try and get a asset that is native to your device. But if you can't, then you fall back to a lower one, because you'd rather have some sort of asset loading, even if it's not exactly the right ratio or the right resolution, it's a little distorted in any way, than not have any asset loaded at all. That will be the worst thing you could probably do in this situation. Here we actually check what device we're running, and the way we check that is by doing 2048, check if that equals the frame size dot width, and 2048 is the pixel width of an iPad Retina if it is in landscape mode. If it's in portrait mode, this will be the actual height. So we need to also check for that as well, because we don't know what orientation the user is going to have their device in, especially if we support multi-orientation for our application. So we need to just do frame size dot height, and then inside we need to do res directory orders dot push back. Then in here we need to do iPad HD. We can just copy this code as we are just changing the resolution directory, and we want 5 directories here. We want iPad HD, iPad, iPhone HD5, we want iPhone HD, and finally we want just regular iPhone. And what we can do, we can just copy and paste this code, as we only need to change a few variables. Else, and we can change this to 1024. This is the non-retina iPad now, and for that we just remove the iPad HD. Copy and paste that again, and now we are checking for iPhone Retina, but the iPhone 5 and iPhone 5S. The way we're designing this now is, if Apple were to release some new devices, which they're going to, and if they were of a different screen ratio or screen resolution, you could add them accordingly and do a fallback accordingly. I've just spelt iPhone wrong. Let's just fix that. We've done 1136, 1136. You want to get rid of iPad, because we want it from the iPhone HD5, as that is the highest resolution for the device. Do another one, and this will be 960. This is iPhone 4 and iPhone 4S. We don't want to do iPhone HD5, and then finally we do the iPhone. But instead of doing an else, if we just do an else, so if you can't check anything else, it by default will just fall back to this directory structure, which will just be regular iPhone. I need to make sure I spell iPhone correctly, otherwise the correct assets will unfortunately not load. Okay, so now that that code is done there, we can just do the last piece of code, which is cc file utils shared file utils set search resolutions order, and put that to res directory orders, which is a vector of string, and that is all the code done. That is all you actually have to do. The next step is to just basically test this out and make sure it actually works. So we'll go to iPhone, running the simulator. We have build failed. Let's have a look why the build has failed. Use of undeclared identifier CCEGL. That was meant to be CCEGL view. Let's just get rid of this breakpoint, as we obviously don't want it. Let's just play it. The build has succeeded. Let's have a look. Okay, There we go. That is the background I created. Like I said, just a very simple black background. It just says the device type we're running, and on this it's just a regular non-retina iPhone, and this is the actual asset itself. Next, we'll try iPhone Retina 3.5 inch. So this will be iPhone 4 and iPhone 4S. Again, that's working well. So it's detected the iPhone HD and it's using this button. You might think, why isn't it positioned correctly whereas the other one was on the iPhone simulator? And this is nothing to do with the code here. This is actually to do with the base code that we got from the generated project, and I will fix that just so you can see how to fix that once we've just confirmed that all the simulators are working. And I will explain why this error was coming about as well, or this bug. Now this is the iPhone HD, but this is iPhone 5 and 5S. And that bug is apparent here as well, where the button is not completely flush with the edge. You want to run it on iPad. This is non-retina, so this is iPad 1, iPad 2 and the iPad mini. There we go, iPad, and again, same bug. And finally, we want to do iPad Retina. I will obviously naturally have to scroll, but you should still be able to see the iPad HD resource being selected from the resource folder, the background and the button itself. Again, that's a little bug, but we'll fix that now. That is basically it for this tutorial, how to do multi-resolutions, and you can apply this to different platforms as well, but let's just fix that bug that we had, because obviously that is a little annoying. As you can see, this is the close item right here. It's declared, initialized and positioned here, but what it's done is positioned using 2020, which is the actual size of a small image, which was the default image that was included. But we don't want to do that, and it's, in my opinion, it is stupid to put explicit values. You don't want to put magic numbers. You want to do it dynamically. To do it dynamically, you do close item, or whatever the item is called, dot get content size. You might have seen there that IntelliSense didn't kick in. What I found is for JavaScript, Cocos2d, the IntelliSense isn't the best, but once you use a particular function once, it will appear in the IntelliSense for that project. But the problem with that is, even if you use it and you use a function that doesn't exist and the compilation fails, it will still pick up that function in IntelliSense. But I'm hoping that this gets improved. What we want to do as the anchor point, it's 0.5, 0.5, so it's the center of the actual image. We want to divide this by 2. Divide this by 2. So we should, if I click play now, it should be flush to the edge on all the devices. Okay, it isn't. Let's have a look. Okay. Close item dot get content size. Let's play again. That's one thing I found with the JavaScript implementation of Cocos2d and JavaScript in general. If your code isn't correct and the syntax isn't right, it won't necessarily throw a compilation error. It'll just mess up the rendering or something else in the actual application. It'll give you a runtime error instead of a compilation. But as you can see, it's flush, and this just says the actual size of the sprite or the menu item. Let's just do iPad. We'll just go through all of them to illustrate that it is working. It's working for iPad. And this is what you want to do when you create any sort of app. You want to do it dynamically. So if you change an asset, it will be positioned where you want it to. So if you want it positioned in the center, it will always be positioned in the center if you do something similar to this, instead of just putting explicit numbers for that particular asset. iPhone HD 5 seems to work fine. Let's do iPhone Retina. the 3.5 inch, so that's iPhone 4 and iPhone 4S. That works fine. Let's finally just check iPhone, because even though that was working, we don't know that could stop working now. Sometimes that happens when you're coding. Something that works stops working because you've tried to fix something else. Did click play. Oh, it's loading. There we go. It's fine. It's loaded. Obviously this button doesn't do nothing except for print out something in the log down below, but that's great. It's working. So yeah, that's it for this tutorial. All the source code for the previous project, this project, and the actual resources used will be in the description. Plus, the next tutorial will be on how to add a sprite. What you might realize that there's a sprite already added right here, but it was added for you with the generated project. What we'll be doing is taking out all of this code and just adding one from scratch. But that's for the next tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.